Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Founder Institute Middle East event. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Please share where are you joining from in the chat. I would love to know from which city, country you are joining. This is a very special event. We have great panel with us, but before we introduce them and start this discussion about a very important and tricky topic, fundraising in the region. Let me just introduce myself and tell you a little bit about Founder Institute for those who are not familiar with FI. My name is Mohammed Senterisi. I'm the regional director at Founder Institute. We consider ourselves to be the world's largest network for innovation, for startup innovation. We have more than 250 cities who are basically running our core flagship accelerator. One of these countries is Jordan. We also operate in Egypt. We also operate in Palestine, Lebanon, Iraq, UAE, Riyadh, and across basically the region of the Middle East. We have also, I would say, one of the secret sauce of our network is basically the advisors and mentors who are actively engaging with our entrepreneurs, again, across the globe. We have a pool of 35,000 active members. And so far, throughout the last 15 years, we were able to help and accelerate more than 7,000 companies who are today valued at $35 billion. All went through a proven methodology of a 13 weeks intensive, very intensive actually program. Hanan is one of our alumni. Maybe she can share a bit about her experience with us. Without further ado, if you are interested in FI, just visit fi.co. I'll drop in the link in the chat in a bit. But again, this event, I wanted to stress on one thing maybe. This event is about you, the attendees. So please feel free to prepare your questions for our panelists and ask any questions that are startup related, funding related. We have an amazing panel with us who can add tons of value for everyone here. Again, Chris, Hanan, Marwan, thank you guys for joining us. Very happy to have you with us. Hanan, the floor is yours. I'll unmute myself. Please, if you want to say hi, introduce yourself and take it away.
Merhaba. Hello, everyone. My name is Hanan. I initially joined Founder Institute in 2021 to build a startup. And today I'm fundraising. So one of the assignments I had as a fundraising founder is to talk to great founders like Marwan and Chris, who went through the fundraising process to know more about their journey. And because their journey is so valuable, we thought we should share it with all of you. I will allow Marwan and Chris to introduce themselves shortly, and then we'll start the questions. Marwan, thank you for joining us. It has always been a pleasure talking to you, learning from you. Please introduce yourself and a little bit about Kitchify.
Thank you, Hanan. Thank you guys for having me. My name is Marwan Abu Sakha. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Kitchify. Kitchify is a food tech startup that runs a couple of three main models in the F&B industry. We utilize existing resources inside kitchens that are untapped into. So we help restaurant owners generate more revenue by hosting more brands. And we take existing brands and expand them to other locations. And thirdly, we're launching now actually a healthy food aggregator that basically looks like a lot like Uber Eats and DoorDash, but with a focus on healthy food, because this is now generating huge demand in the market. And it's one of the things that we're excited for because it's impact oriented as well, which is a really important thing to be passionate about while building products. Yeah, that's about it. I started in Jordan, moved to Riyadh last year. Now I'm actually in Jeddah because we're launching a new city. And looking forward to hearing your questions and sharing any valuable insights I might have.
Chris, on the other side of innovation.
The other side of the world, also, I'm calling from Lisbon. I'm in a conference in Portugal, and the conference is really nice. And I have a really beautiful view of the ocean right now, but the internet inside actually died, or it's not really working well. So I'm outside in the sun with my sunglasses. So sorry if I don't look professional right now, but it's what it is. If you're not struggling, if you're not running around, then you're not founding a business, I guess. So my background is I'm Palestinian German, born in Latin America, and now living in Amsterdam. And we have a company now with 28 people, and we are in the space of career acceleration. So imagine when you guys were young and maybe 22, 23, you were looking for a job, you didn't know what to do, you knew you had big ambitions and big dreams, you studied hard, but then the market is very confusing. So what we do is we support young people in their journeys towards jobs. And so far, we've placed over 200 people just in the last 18 months in tech companies all over the world. So mostly the companies that are hiring from us are remote companies in Europe or in the GCC who are in tech. So we focus on all domains. We're not just for software or for data. It's actually everything. We focus on the individual, and we then connect the individual to the companies in a meaningful way. And yeah, we've gone through the fundraising process now a couple of times, and it's a lot of fun, and it's interesting to know how to approach it. So happy to share here today with you.
Amazing, amazing. I like the diversity of sectors and locations. I would like to start maybe with a cliche question, but it always has interesting answers. It's about failure. So, usually when people look at the word failure, it seems like something bad, it's negative. How important, in your opinion, how important failure is impacting your journey? Is it something that taught you, or it's something you're still afraid of? I'll start with you, Marwan.
Amazing. It's both actually, but with the time, it becomes a little bit less scary. So for me, before Kitchify, I founded 4 startups. 3 of them failed. One only made it through. And inside Kitchify, I maybe failed in 5 models because we pivoted 5 times. And honestly, I can definitely say it's definitely a good thing that you should look forward to, because looking back at them, every one of the pivots, every one of the startups that I shut down, I came out of that experience with a lot of new things that I had the chance to implement and work on. One of them, I would say the biggest mistake in the first couple of failures was that I didn't really focus on learning what I did wrong in my previous experiences, and I ended up repeating a lot of these mistakes. And this became now part of the culture in the company, where with everyone, like I'm always telling the team, it's super fine, do as many mistakes, but the most important thing is not to do the same mistake again. Because however big the first one is, it's totally okay. But if it's done, if it's done again, it's a big issue. So this was something definitely that like I got the chance to learn a lot from, and like I wouldn't want to explain to everyone now how important it is to fail, but from a perspective of how investors look at it, and since we're discussing investment today, I think maybe a couple of the investors that invested in Kitchify, after they invested and we were having friendly conversations, and I was like, okay, so why did you guys invest with us? I did get the answer that we love to invest in people who failed, but were able to explain how they failed and what they learned about their previous failures. So it is something to be, I wouldn't say to be super vocal about it, the investor, and focus on it, but mention what you failed in before. But what's more important is that what did you learn from that failure, and how is it part of what you're doing today, and how is it going to minimize the chances of you failing again? So yeah, that's my 2 cents on it.
Chris, how is your relationship with failure?
Yeah, I would say I love to fail, because obviously the more you fail, the closer you're getting to the result you're looking for, right? So fail is part of the process. Failing is just something you have to be completely comfortable with. And I think the only thing about failure that is pretty nasty is when you fail and it really impacts you as individually, emotionally, or financially. So you have to know how to fail. You cannot just fail and then tomorrow you're on the street, you're done. You know, you have to always have a process that allows you to fail. And I think that's the most important thing I learned in my failing journey.
Okay, I'll jump into from failure to some self-confidence, where you decide to reach out to investors. So how did you initially start reaching out to investors? Did you have a plan? Did you have a pipeline, or you started naturally and then started learning? So I'll start with you, Marwan, again.
Okay. So honestly, one of the things that really helped out is that I had a network before I started my first company. And I didn't have that network because I was a founder previously, but I spent maybe 2 years before starting the first company attending every entrepreneurial event around my area. And I actually got into arranging events as well. So during that period, I had the chance to build some good connections. So what I would say, whether you already started and you're not into that ecosystem yet, or you're willing to start now, attend as many events as possible in the first days. After that, after you build a good network, then sometimes it becomes a waste of time. So it's something important to look at. But for us, like we have around 15 investors in the company. I can say that 12 of them were VCs or angel investors that I met in events, whether exhibiting, talking to a guy while getting my coffee, in the most random ways. Because events, it's the most concentrated place that you can find people in. But again, and this is really, really important because it's a mistake I made, is that know when you're wasting time in an event. And that's most probably when you finish an event and you look at your connections, there's no valuable connection that you actually made through that event, or nothing valuable that you came out of it. Second, post that phase, cold outreach is it's a process that does get you a lot of leads. It has a way less of a conversion. But the nice thing about it is that you start finding people that are specifically more into your area. And I would recommend here LinkedIn, Sales Navigator as well. And maybe like in the coming questions, we can talk about how this is really related to sales. But digitally trying to find leads that match the area that you're in, and you match the criteria that they're looking for, is as well a beneficial process. Intros are definitely something as well that you can utilize. They have the highest conversion rate, but then you need to have a network, an existing network to start having intros. And most of them, they come either platonically or whenever you ask people that are already with you for them.
Thank you, Marwan. Actually, very I like how smooth or natural. It's a process rather than if there is a plan, that there's also a process. Before we move to Chris, I would just want to indicate that we're talking about the fundraising where you're raising somehow big tickets, where you will need to reach out to more than one investor, because there is a phase before that where you might raise from an accelerator, and that would simply be applying to a program. So we're past that phase and we're talking about raising bigger amounts of money. Chris, how was your relationship with investors? How did it start? Was it organic? Was it planned? How did it go?
Yeah. So I think the network part is very important. I'll explain how the networks are important. But I think what's really important is that you have to sell your idea, right? So you're going to go out and you're going to be talking about your idea and selling, because you have to talk to a lot of people until you find somebody who understands what you're trying to say. But you also have to talk to a lot of people to improve your pitch, right? So when your first attempts at selling are going to be all about improving your pitch. You're going to talk to people, tell them what you're doing, and they're going to be like, I don't understand it. What you mean? About what is this thing? What's the value? And then you're going to be improving your pitch. But in this whole process, what's really important is that you have to have the energy to actually go out 1,000 times to hundreds of people to talk about what you're doing. And to be able to do that, you have to be in love with what you're doing. And I think that the first step to actually go out and sell and talk to people is really believe and love what you're doing, because otherwise it's going to be really, really hard to just talk to people a lot of times. And then once you have done this a lot and you know how to do it, I think the network element is really important as well, because the networks just validate you as a person also, because now you have your idea, it makes sense, but then how do you validate yourself? And that's typically through the power of networks.
Amazing. I think it's also commenting on that, where you build your A list, B list, and C list. And yes, we start even with fundraising to test, as you said, to practice, to build the self-confidence. Building on that, how does it's a little bit personal now, hearing all the no's, how does it impact, like how do you balance actually ego, self-confidence, and courage? Because I think managing your own self-growth or personal growth is also a key part of this process. So I'll go with you, Marwan.
I love the question. So I guess there's two parts to it. One part is that a lot of the time you realize that you're connecting your self-value to the value of your startup. And this is when you do get rejections, you take them personal, because a part of it, there could be a million reasons why the investor or the deal didn't go through. But I think subconsciously what happens is that most of us founders are really passionate about what we're doing. It's what we do most of the day. So for you, if this doesn't work, if you get a no here, it's basically it becomes a personal thing until you start to disconnect your personal thinking process and your personal worth from the startup. And then you start understanding that that doesn't have to be the best fit for everyone. The second thing, what Chris just said, and I love that, is that you really do change the pitch and you really do change the way you're telling the story every single time. And when you start taking no's and rejections and focusing on what could be changed, and then the no's become as it's something that's going to increase the chance of you getting a yes next time. But this is why it's really important as well to ask why after you get a no. Like a no should never be okay, thank you. No, a no should always be, can I just know why? And then it could be something that they're not focusing on. It's something outside of the criteria or the things that they're looking for, but it could be something we didn't find synergy between you and your co-founder. And it could be the tiniest thing that you guys said to each other in the pitch. So when you start looking at it from this perspective, you start getting excited actually to just talk to as many people as you can and then turning a no into a yes. Exactly.
Marwan, a follow-up question. How many no's did you get? Actually, how much money did you raise so far? And with the last round, how many no's did you get?
We raised around $1 million so far, and I can't answer how many no's we got because I definitely lost count. The percentage of no's, like it got less, and it got more at other points when we were pivoting and like at
No, I
different
mean with
stages.
if I make it clearer, maybe with the last round, you were raising X amount of money. Within X amount of time, you got X amount of no's. So if you can give.
Yeah, and to give some estimation, we were raising. It was actually a bridge round, so we were raising around $300,000. We spoke to maybe at least, I would say, 20 investors, 20 or 30 investors, and we got 15 or 25 rejections. We ended up with 5 investors from the people that we spoke to.
Amazing. Chris, how did it go with you? With the no's, with the yeses?
Yeah, I mean, I think the story of my first investor actually is very interesting because um, I was getting a lot of no's at the beginning, and typically when you're getting a lot of no's means that something that you're saying is not clicking. Either you're not talking to the right people. So what we do is very impactful developmental work with career acceleration for underserved people. We operate in Palestine, in Gaza, in West Bank, in Jordan, now in Lebanon. So a lot of investors are like, oh, this is not scalable, this is not big enough for me, etc. So at the beginning, you're pitching your idea to somebody who's not even willing to listen to it. So a lot of the no's actually coming from the fact that you're just not sitting with the right people. But once you find the right people that are interested in what you're doing, the no's start becoming more conversation. And that's when you start learning a bit more about what you're achieving and not, and so on. So yeah, my first investor actually came from very different place. Actually, it wasn't even a pitch. It was a friend of mine who said to his boss, "Hey, boss, this guy is really, really interesting. He's working on something really cool, and also the guy just believed in what we were doing. There was no interest in the business model. There was no interest in I mean, a little bit. Obviously, they wanted to understand how we would make money and this and that, but they just liked the idea. The guy actually was a Dutch guy who when he was, yeah, I'm gonna invest in you. It's let's go. I was wondering why, and then I realized his wife was Lebanese, and his wife, being Lebanese, had seen a lot of the reasons of the things that we were trying to solve, and actually she was the connection. So again, I think the most important thing and the reason why you get a lot of people get no's at the beginning is because they're not looking at the right person. And in this case, with this investor, actually the right person wasn't him, even it was his wife who was Lebanese, and she was connected to the cause. So yeah, you do get a lot of no's, and you have to understand why you're getting the no's.
It's again, as Marwan said, it mimics the sales process. Sometimes you're selling the right product to the wrong audience. And I think as founders, it's our job also to recognize the ideal customer to invest. But yeah, it's interesting, as you said, the no's that gets you to yeses. What kind of data, again, part of the learning curve? Sometimes we overshare and it's too much. And sometimes we do not share the right data, which leads to misunderstanding. So what type of data do you share with investors? And maybe there's also a phase like phase 1, we do this, and then phase 2, if we get to the interview, to have maybe a call or a meeting, we share this. So how did it go with sharing information? Marwan.
So in the early days, I was way more conservative about information because I was under the impression that if I share specific information, then I'm gonna have someone steal the idea and start with the execution. And when you hear some people saying never share your idea and so on, you start getting a bit obsessed about that. But then you realize that no one actually is gonna start your idea from documents that they might see. And even if they do, the chances of them having basically the dedication and the ability to go for it is really low. And if it happens, it might happen in some cases. Like I had it happen to me once, but you literally don't see the impact of it. On the other side, the more you share, like in a basically balanced manner, the more exposure you get to opportunities. In terms of what kind of data we share, I don't like to share the pitch in the first meeting or in the intro meeting. I really prefer that meeting to be more of a verbal conversation where I'm explaining the model, learning a lot. Actually, I ask a lot of questions to investors as well, because as you just said, Hanan, in the sales part, you need to understand if this could be a potential partner, customer, whatever. And then if not, then there's no need to invest any time or share unnecessary data. So in the first meeting, we don't share anything. After the meeting, we share the pitch, and then we meet again over the pitch. And at that point, if there's further interest, we have a data room that we created on Notion. There's a lot of other platforms that you can use for that. And in this link, there's the financial model, some operational diagrams that explain how the operation goes, a little bit about what next products that we want to develop, links to the products or demos to it. And we actually tailor, like we design a banner with the name of the investor in each room, because we feel like it does show that we have everything organized, we put some effort, and it makes, I feel like it does give a good impression and a good boost to the conversation and any press releases or anything that was posted about the company. So I guess this would be the third wave, but this would be basically the things that we would share. And you would be surprised that like not a lot, we had investors who literally transferred the money before seeing anything or receiving anything from these. So they're not necessary, but the more VC that you go, the more accelerator towards that segment, then the more data and the more time you need to put into the data room to make it neat. And basically, like, just give another boost for the investor to know, yeah, these guys, they know what they're doing.
Just a follow-up, Marwan. Do you have, for example, multiple versions of the pitch deck? For example, a one-pager, a full pitch deck, or maybe one with 5 pages? And when do you share them? In which, in which process?
I have like pitch decks on our Canva account are named by the name of investors because we literally
Marwan?
I guess we lost Marwan. Maybe he's going to rejoin.
Okay, maybe we'll jump to Chris until Marwan is back. So Chris, I'll the same question. In terms of data, what type of data do you share with investors and in which timeline or phase?
Yeah. So I completely agree with what Marwan said. You should not be too careful, too afraid of sharing, because none of the investors has time to start a company, nor they understand the industry you're in to do it. It's good to share as much as possible, except so I think that the advice is there's a really good advice on this topic by Peter Thiel. It says, yeah, I will actually find it and send it over to you because it was really valuable. I have the book in my backpack right now. Read that book, by the way, Peter Thiel 0 to 1. It's a book that helped me a lot in my thought process.
Can you write? Can you say the name again?
0 to 1 by Peter Thiel.
0 to 1 by Peter. What?
Thiel. The Thiel.
Thiel.
Look,
okay.
It's always with me.
Okay.
And yeah, never be scared of what to share with investors. They don't care about what you're building unless they do care, in which case they actually will invest in you, right? So and what investors want to hear, want to see, it's not, in my view, obviously, is market size, it's team and all that stuff, but the most important thing is traction. There's no other metric that tells an investor how interesting is your business and traction. If you have 100 users last year and you have 400 users this year, that means that you're growing by 400x. That's a good thing to show somebody. Whether you make money on that or not, it's okay, because if you can keep growing and growing and growing, at some point you'll be able to make money because you're creating value. And the other thing is that I learned in my pitching time that never pitch with a deck. I don't know if it's something particular to me, but the moment I open the deck, I start telling a story that is actually the deck instead of my own story of how the whole thing formed. So my most successful pitches actually were where I didn't even share the deck. I just spoke to the investor the whole time.
Yeah, I resonate with that too, actually. And what type of information do you share in terms of numbers? So you share them, maybe I'll ask the same question to Marwan as well. Is it multiple types of or formats of a pitch deck, or data room, and in which at which point you share data rooms with investors? So do you directly share them whenever you have maybe a second meeting, or at a certain stage of the agreement you start sharing data room?
Data room is only interesting for an investor if he or she is going to use it, right? So it's only if they ask you for it. They say, hey, I want to see your data room. At that point, you do it. But I mean, sending it in advance obviously shows confidence, and it's also good. So either I would share it in advance, or share it if they tell me, hey, I'm really interested in what you're doing, and I want to know more. Please send me the data room. So yeah, it works both ways. But I would not share it as a way to maybe convince otherwise. No, look at my data; it's positive. They're most likely already gone by then.
Marwan, we got interrupted. So
yeah.
we're talking about the multiple versions of pitch decks you have.
Yeah, sorry, it got disconnected. So yeah, on that point, what I was saying is that like it doesn't have it's not a really different version of each pitch deck, but doing research on the person you're talking to, and then making sure if you have a part that would relate to a specific part of their expertise, their portfolio, and so on, make sure you mention that in the meeting. On your second question, the data room is the last thing that we send usually. So it's usually the pitch deck, and it's the second. So after that, if there's interest, we do share the data room. And in terms of numbers that are in it, the financial model has basically like everything in terms of revenue, CAC, like our burn rate, where we're spending our money. So it has it's usually a big document, but I don't think anyone actually looks at the details of it rather than the revenue, the CAC, and how much we're netting out of that, until that they have the initial interest and they tell us, yes, we want to invest. And the due diligence, when the due diligence starts, this is where we actually get specific questions about the financial model and basically everything financially related. And yeah, it's
Speaking
the
of due
basic standard
diligence,
template.
yeah. So speaking of due diligence, so we know that investors will do their due diligence on founders. Do you do your due diligence on investors, or if they have money, I'll just take it?
So like honestly, if like so I thought that the more you do due diligence and the more you make sure that they need to have a lot of strategic value to the company, and this is when you take your money. I think this doesn't really apply really well. So as long as the investors, so we did say no to investors, and we did actually get investors from countries that we wouldn't want to be affiliated with, or any specific, like without going into the specifics of it. And this is something that we figured out once we did our proper due diligence on the VC. Because at the end of the day, anyone who puts money with you is basically directly attaching your image to their image and any actions that they take. So as long as there's no ethical let's say, challenge, or there's nothing ethical that you're against in their portfolio or the way that they do business, I think there's no major reason to say no to any investor without any like major outliers. Maybe they invested in any of your competitors and that would harm you in the future. But other than that, like due diligence on a level where you just see like there's nothing major, and I wouldn't go further than that. And I was told a couple of times, don't say no to money. And it is a true statement in a sense where don't focus a lot on a lot of reasons why to say it's just take the money, because at some point, and raise when you have the money, because if you reach a point where you need the money, it becomes way harder to raise the money, and then you would be like, I wish I said that yes to that deal, we would have had a better status at the moment, and so on. So a light version of due diligence with nothing ethical, and that would be the major thing that we do.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the idea about raising money when you need money is really good that you mentioned, Marwan. I think it's really hard to find money where you're desperate. So, for example, we closed our Series A now, like I don't know, 2 months ago, and we were running out of money in August. So we closed it 6 months before, 7 months before we were running out. If we started with the process 3 months before or 2 months before, not only are you already short of time, you have to rush, but also you're under a lot of pressure, and you're going to be very, very stressed, and then you're going to have the wrong energy when you're with an investor. You're never going to be confident, and it's going to go not so well. And yeah, I think that's a very important thing that Marwan was saying. I want to.
Following up on that, so usually it does take like around 3 to 6 months to close a round. However, these are maybe the numbers in North America and Europe. How is it relevant to our region? How long did it take you to close a round, Marwan?
So our first round took us maybe 9 to 10 months, but I would say we didn't have product market fit yet. We weren't really aware of how much we should raise. We had less connections, and it was definitely like it took more time. The bridge one, it took less, took maybe 6 to 5 months. So yeah, that was the average for us. But I think like there's no specific metric that you can measure that in, because once like it's definitely not good to stay on raising mode all of the time, because then you're less focused on other important things in the business. But for us, what happened is that we got introduced to investors along the way, and we never actually set a specific round and said that this is a specific round that we're raising. I would meet an investor, and they would just tell me like, okay, I'm interested in knowing more. We'd have a conversation. This is the valuation we're raising on, and they would put basically they would invest with us. So yeah, I think maybe our experience was a bit like different in that aspect.
I think it's really nice to have different experiences, because people would think if I don't do it this way, then it's a failure. But everyone works in a different way. Chris, how was like how long did it take you to close your last round, maybe?
So I think what's interesting is in fundraising is that you never feel like you close your round until the money is in the bank, right? So right now we're doing the due diligence right now. We're expecting to get the money in the next 2 months, but from the moment we started last time, it was maybe 4 to 5 months. But I think we got really, really, really lucky, because we come across an investor who was really on the same topic as we were, and all the stars aligned. I think we had typically, I would say 4 to 9 months is the timeline you want to look at fundraising. And another thing that I think is important is when you're fundraising and you're talking to different investors, there's gonna be, 50, 100 people you want to talk to, and there's gonna be in this list of 100 people, there's gonna be 5 or 6 that are the golden standard investors, the best ones, the one that you would love to invest. And you never want to go to these guys first, right? You want to practice with the other guys. You want to go to guys who will listen to you, who will pay attention, who will be interested in what you're saying. But if you fail in this pitch, there will not be a massive consequence. But by the time you get to the right guys, the better guys, you are more confident, and you have pitched enough times, and you are ready to pitch to these guys and be successful with these guys.
I'll take maybe some questions if anyone wants to have some questions, and if they don't have questions, we'll continue with ours. So anyone have questions for Chris and Marwan, or maybe follow-ups on certain questions we've asked? So I think you mentioned, let me check if there are more that might be out of the topic. Okay, so let's just go back to the existing questions already. So from Siba, she's saying, when did you decide it's time to raise in terms of product stage and revenue generation? And what do you think about hiring a specialist to raise for you? Who wants to answer this one?
Chris, you can go.
Sure. Thank you. So I have never heard of anybody having somebody racing for them that were successful. Some people tell you, I will help you fundraise and this and that, but that never works. It's only the CEO's role. Is the only person who knows what the company is doing, who can convince an investor. So 0% chance, in my view, that this will work. And when can you start fundraising? I think it's very important, because the venture capital world works in a way that you can fundraise basically with a pitch deck. You can say, hey, here's my pitch deck. This is who I am. I want $10 million, right? That's how it works. If you look at all the AI companies that came after OpenAI, it was just people with pitch decks that were raising 100 million, right? So my view here is, if you are somebody who can actually convince an investor, you should immediately do it. Because first, if the idea fails, you don't want to spend your own money. I spent over 60 to 80,000 euros of my own money building the company. And if I had been smarter about fundraising, I would have done it better or earlier or and so on, and I would have been able to tell a better story. I wouldn't have spent my own money. So as soon as you have the story, go out there and try as much as possible, so that you don't have to spend your own money, and you're not in financial distress, and you can be relaxed and have that safety net. So for me, it's the answer is always as soon as possible, and never, and to the extent you can, don't spend your own money.
Thank you, Chris. There's another question from Nermeen. Maybe Marwan can answer it. Once you attract investors, do you go through the financial valuation? Which valuation method do you use? How you decide on equity? Yes, like how do you decide on equity splits and pricing, for example?
Okay, so in terms of the best form of let's say legal contracting that I would recommend everyone to do in the early days, safe agreements, simple agreements for future equity. For us, it worked the best. A lot of my startup founder friends as well. Like, it's the one that needs the least amount of negotiation and the least amount of back and forth with investors, and it does protect the investor and the founder in terms of valuation and what the future would hold. In terms of how to set the valuation, honestly, there's no, like, especially when you're talking about safe agreements, and unless it's like a advanced stage in the company where you already have a lot of revenues and you want to do a price round, then in that case it would be done either by an expert or you can consult on it. But in the early days, there's no standard for it. So it's how much you think that the company would be worth, and how much are other companies in the same space raising on what valuations. And eventually it comes down into a negotiation with the investor. You could start with a 3 million pre-money valuation and idea stage. This is what we raised on when we started. But I think if we're starting now, I would go a little bit lower, because depending on the market dynamics. So you really need to see what's happening in the scene, and in your space specifically, how much, what is the average number that's being basically discussed. On another note, I wouldn't recommend at all that you do, for example, agree with an investor on a high valuation and you do sign on it, because eventually what would happen, you would be down rounding, because you can't, if you convince one person with an unreasonably high valuation, you wouldn't be able to convince other people, and you would be losing money along the way. And one piece of advice that I got that was really honestly beneficial for me from a founder of a company called Cloudera. He's Egyptian, actually. He's called Amr Awadallah, really great guy. And I was talking to him once, and I was asking him how to do the equity distribution and how to go for, I don't want to give up this much equity for at this stage. And he told me something that resonates with me till this day, is that if it's your first company, then really focus on building a success story more than focusing on how much money you want to make out of it. Because eventually you're going to make money at after it, or from the startup. But because at some days, their companies because of maybe not onboarding a certain investor or a certain co-founder who wanted a little bit more. So I'm not saying be super loose on it, but at the same time, don't laser focus on it, because you never know what happens. So yeah, that would be my two piece on it.
Okay, one question from Ahmed. He says a question that might be out of topic. How can we, but it's a good question actually. How can we differentiate startups from traditional companies, especially in the beginning? Who would like to take that?
Sure, I'm happy to go. Companies, startups are supposed to use a tech product, right? So there's, I know this answer very well, because for a very long time, companies like venture capital, VCs would tell me, hey, what you guys are doing, because we're doing training and placement and jobs. They told me, you're not a venture capital play. You should not be fundraising from venture capital. And because we were talking about placing 100 people, 200 people per year, revenue growing from maybe 1 million to 1.5 to 2, and so on. And for me, obviously, that was a company. That was not a venture capital. That was not a tech startup. But that doesn't mean that you can't become a tech startup. Our ambition as a company, as a group of people, was always to be a tech startup. But now, if you begin your journey as a company or as a consultancy or something else, that's fine. As long as you find somewhere on the journey what is a tech element that is going to make you become a tech company. And a tech company is something that has to grow really, really fast. You have to grow from 0 users to 10,000 users within a year. That's when you become a tech startup. And obviously, this has to be enabled by very, very lean software-driven processes.
I think I'm just checking. You mentioned, okay, so we have a question. Another one, you mentioned the financial model. What other must-have documents that are mostly requested by interested investors? Marwan, would you like to take that?
So, like, honestly, they're different. Like for us, investor teaser was requested sometimes, because it would be, for example, an associate at a certain VC, and they don't want to send the full pitch deck because it would take a lot of time, so they would request an investment teaser. Establishment papers, for example, the legal papers, because sometimes they want to check the legal status of the company. Some VCs have certain areas that they can't invest in or jurisdictions. So it actually differs, but when you do create your first data room and you put the essentials, financial model, the pitch deck, the teaser, some operational diagrams, the legal papers, demos, then honestly, the chances of you getting asked for something that is not there would be specific. For example, let's say we're in F&B and there's an investor that is heavy on F&B. At that point, they would go into quality assurance and health and safety papers, for example. And it would be either something that we already have or something that we would do for them and send them. So these would be the basics. If you cover them, then the chances of getting asked for something else, it would be actually minimal, or we didn't have the experience of getting asked for anything else. Chris, if there's anything that I missed in terms of the documents, please feel free to add.
No, I think nothing really. I mean, documents are pretty straightforward. The investors will ask you for what you need to show them, and then you're gonna come up with that stuff because you have to. And then eventually you're gonna know what is the most important thing and what is not the most important thing. I think financial models at the very beginning of a startup they don't make any sense because you don't know what the future looks like. But then obviously if you're fundraising for Series A or B, then you are already making revenue. So then you have to have a strong CFO, or if you're not as strong in finance, to actually put that together for you and really help you understand what your company could look like in the nearby future. Before I go, I wanted to share my LinkedIn for TAP, so you guys can follow it, and maybe you can see if you want to collaborate with us in terms of tech talent, software, digital marketeers, sales, all that stuff that we do. It's really cool. If not, just follow us because we have a bunch of really cool stories as well to share. And yeah, that's all.
Before you go also, Chris, if you could give us maybe your top one advice for founders who are going to in the pathway of fundraising.
Interesting. Oof, I don't know. Marwan, we can maybe build up on an idea here, but the top priority is I think, you know, if you're gonna be building a company, you're gonna be building a company for 5, 6 years, maybe more. And if your idea is not picking up speed, investors are not interested in it, and so on. There's always you know, there's always better ideas, there's always better things. In the end, it's always about execution. So do not be too crazy about doing what you're doing. Be crazy about the process, and always learn from all the conversations you have. Any other thoughts, Marwan? Because I think it's a good question, but I don't know how to answer it.
Yeah, sure. So, but I think one of the things would be focusing a lot on pitching and the story and how everything looks from the outside, and at some point forgetting to actually focus on building a decent product that would generate revenue at the end of the day. Because honestly, I know a lot of entrepreneurs who are not great at pitching at all, but their products, they speak for them. Because eventually, if you actually build a product that does solve a problem, it has the potential to generate revenue, you wouldn't face a lot of difficulties fundraising. So what I would say is that don't spend a lot of time on the story and the visuals and the branding and the design and so on, rather than like spend a major chunk of your time on building the product and having a solid business. And then once you generate revenue, and as Chris said, traction would be the most important thing, everything would work out. Because if you have the best pitch and bad traction, no one is going to give you money. But if you have a really bad pitch and then they see the numbers, and they would be like, wow, you guys are actually doing this, everyone would put money, and investors would tell other investors to invest. So yeah.
So it's 7:30. We're supposed to end this conversation to be mindful of the time. So I will thank you both, Marwan and Chris. Big thank you for the nice energy, for all the valuable, genuine information. Um, we have a couple of more questions. If you want, if you would like to stay maybe 5 minutes more to answer them, we would be happy. If not, we all like you could be ready to leave.
I don't mind. I can stay. Chris, I feel like you're in a rush, so feel free. I
Yeah,
can
I
try
am
my
in a
best to answer
a
them.
conference, so I will have to jump out. But I think you are fully taken care of by Marwan. I think everything you had to say today, Marwan, was very insightful. Looking forward to connect with you as well. I think we might be connected already. So see you around. Thank you so much, everyone.
See you.
Thank you,
Good luck.
Chris.
Bye bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, Marwan, the rock star now. Okay, we have one more. We have a question from Bishoy. Is there a standard to tell that I am ready to pitch?
Yes, there's a universal one. It's now like there's you're ready to pitch now because as we said earlier, like connecting a couple of points together, pitch, fail, and because if you fail, you might have not been ready to pitch, or the potential investor is not the right fit for you. In all cases, it's a positive experience for your next pitch. So just make sure you practice in front of people as well, because we all get nervous, especially if it's a public pitch too. But the right time to pitch would always be now. Any opportunity you get, make sure you do your best in terms of just practicing and doing the research. But other than that, it's never gonna be a perfect pitch. So the right time for you would be your next pitch is the right time.
No perfect pitch, no perfect product, no perfect team, nothing perfect, and you will still do it.
Exactly. It's always a better pitch, a better product, and a better business.
Yeah, because again, it's a progress, it's a process. Another one is, have any of you been asked to include the competitor landscape within your pitch? And if you have done a previous exercise with limited resources to access, especially for B2B model. I'm not sure if I got the question, the second part, if you have done a previous exercise with limited resources. I think the question is because sometimes about the competition or the data, if you don't find all the data online, how do you tackle that? I'm not sure if I got it right. So if you got it in another way, please go ahead, Marwan.
Okay, so in terms of competitive landscape, I don't put it all of the time, but it depends on like the product that we're pitching. So if there's a lot of competition already in that space, then it would be the most important slide. Because at some point we were trying to create a food aggregator, and every time we would pitch it to an investor, they would be like, you can't compete with Jahez, Hunger Station, Talabat, Delivery Hero. These guys already are dominating the market. And at that point, so I got a couple of no's in that from these investors, and when I asked why, they told me because of the competition. And then in my next iteration of the pitch, I really focused on having a comprehensive competitive landscape slide where I do explain how we're different, how we're not going to have a high acquisition cost like these guys because we're more B2B to C. And after that, I stopped getting a lot of resistance on the competition aspect. In terms of B2B, honestly, I feel like it's a bit. I wouldn't say it's easier, but you have better chances of getting data because if it's B2B, then in some way you would have more exposure on how the financial model of your competitor works. You can have demos, you can visit, if you're a physical place, and so on. And in that aspect, I wouldn't recommend you go into the nitty details of it, rather than in terms of value proposition, mention how you guys are different. And more importantly, if they have major issues that are obvious in their business model, like in our case, for example, the food aggregator, the acquisition cost is high, mention it before you get asked about it. And I think this is a really important thing in pitching. Take notes of what questions you get, and if you get a question multiple times in your pitches, try to put the answer for this question inside the slides, because at the end of the pitch, the less questions you get that are trying to basically challenge your model, the more subconsciously the investors would be convinced that this is a good investment for them.
Okay, Marwan, we have one more question, and then
Yeah.
we'll let you
Yes.
go.
Please.
Okay. Yes, if I'm a solo founder, but I have potential list of powerful management team, is there a chance to get a fund for my idea, especially if I have experience in my idea field?
So, like, the answer could never be no, there's no chance that you would get investment, but it's definitely higher if you already started. So, from my experience, the best scenario is always to try to come up with any version of the MVP that would exist in your domain, or the idea that you're trying to start. And then, like, it wouldn't be called an idea. Then it would be called a startup that's already there. Because whenever you say, I want to raise on an idea, it would be like, I'm going to an investor and I'm telling them, I have a full-time job that I didn't quit yet, and I have this idea and I want to take your money. And it's different than telling them, okay, so we have this MVP, this is the platform, this is something that you can check out, you can see, and I want this amount to quit next month and start, and this is the team that is also already working on the product, and they want to quit once we already have the funds that can sustain the company. So basically what I'm saying is that try to not frame it as an idea, see what things you can work on with minimal resources that would frame it as a startup or an MVP at least, and pitch that. Because investors investing in ideas, especially if you don't have crazy success stories before, it makes the conversion rate way less. If you already exited 3-4 startups, or you did a multi-million-dollar exit, then I would tell you, yeah, you can definitely raise on an idea, and you would raise on a $20 million, $30 million valuation from your idea stage. But other than that, if you're just starting out, then I wouldn't really recommend that.
Okay. I'll keep giving you questions until you say stop.
No, no worries. Go for it.
I have a little revenue. Is there any investors I can connect with to make our project work on a wide range and in a bigger or a wider area?
Sorry again. So
So
you
this
have a
person
little
has,
bit, yeah.
yes, little revenues. So the
Yeah.
question is, are there types of investors who would connect, who would be interested in this startup that has little revenues, yeah, to invest?
Definitely. So, like, if the founder doesn't have the network already, so it's either you have the network and then you can start asking people that you already know and sharing with them what you're doing and the pitch deck. And in this case, if you don't, let's say your idea is in health tech, then what I would do is that I would go on LinkedIn, I would use the sales navigator tool that they have. I would put angel investor. And this is something really important as well, guys. If you're just starting out, the chances of you getting money from an angel investor is way much higher than VCs. And actually, angel investors and accelerators, there's a lot of accelerators that would go first into a startup, and then VCs. So I wouldn't waste a lot of time investing and trying to reach out to VCs. But yeah, going back to this question, In that case, then if I already have the connections, I would go for the connections I have. If not, I would go on LinkedIn. I would put health tech if I'm in health tech, angel investors. Let's say I'm in Jeddah, I would put Jeddah as well into the filters. And most probably, wherever you are, you would get 20, 30, 40 results. I would message these guys to have a conversation with them or a physical meeting. And I would start from there. Because there is a really high chance that you would find someone who would be really, first, they would like you as a founder and trust you as a founder, and they would like the idea. And this could be how the momentum would start in terms of the raising process.
Thank you, Marwan. Thank you so much.
Anytime.
Let's wrap up the questions. I'm so grateful for all the insights. We hope we'll hear from you soon and see that the success of Kitchify as well. And good luck on your new launch in Jeddah. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for listening. You can send us your questions if you have more questions about anything. Always reach out to Founder Institute, and we would love to hear back from everyone. شكرا جزيلا.
Amazing. Thank you, Hanan, for the amazing moderation. Take care.
إلى اللقاء.